Betrayal doesn't roar, it smirks. Standing in my bedroom, my younger sister waved a stack of bank statements in my face, her acrylic nails tapping the paper. "Found your little savings," she sneered, eyes gleaming with sheer entitlement. "Thanks for the college fund, sis." My entire world stopped spinning. My name is Courtney, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the invisible, load-bearing wall in the Jenkins household. To understand how a sister could stand in my bedroom and gleefully announce she was stealing my future, you have to understand the toxic ecosystem our parents, Martha and Richard, created. Savannah is 3 years younger than me. But in our house, she was the undisputed queen. When Savannah wanted a new iPhone, my dad picked up overtime. When Savannah decided she wanted to do competitive cheerleading, a sport that costs thousands of dollars a year in travel, uniforms, and coaching, my mum quietly cancelled our family vacations and stopped contributing to my modest college fund. Savannah was the talented one, the outgoing one, the one destined for a glamorous life. I was just Courtney, reliable, quiet, and fundamentally overlooked. By the time I graduated high school, it was abundantly clear that there would be no financial help for me. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table, their faces masks of faux sympathy, and told me that things were just too tight. What they meant was that Savannah's upcoming senior year trip to Europe and her designer wardrobe had maxed out their credit cards. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just nodded, walked out of the kitchen, and got a job. Actually, I got 2. For 4 grueling years, my life was a relentless pendulum swinging between Sullivan's Pancake House and a cramped desk at a local HVAC company where I did bookkeeping. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every day. My hands smelled perpetually of maple syrup and stale coffee, and my lower back ached with a dull, constant throb from carrying heavy trays. While my peers were experiencing dorm life, going to frat parties, and finding themselves, I was carefully budgeting every single tip, every single paycheck. My goal was $45,000. It was the exact amount I needed to cover tuition, books, and basic living expenses for an accelerated nursing program at Chamberlain University. I kept the money in a high-yield savings account that, unfortunately, had been opened when I was 17. Because I was a minor at the time, my mother, Martha, was legally required to be a joint account holder. When I turned 18, I had intended to remove her, but she had brushed it off, saying, "Oh, I don't even remember the login, sweetie, just leave it. It's a hassle to change." I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and foolishly trusting. I left it. I kept all my financial documents, the original passbook, the monthly printed statements, and my tax forms, in a locked, fireproof steel box hidden beneath my winter sweaters in the back of my closet. It was my physical proof that my suffering had a purpose. The crisis began in late August. Savannah had somehow gotten accepted into the prestigious and exorbitantly expensive Crestwood Institute of Art. Tuition, room, and board were roughly $60,000 a year. My parents had promised her they would handle it, fully expecting to take out a massive Parent Plus loan. But years of funding Savannah's extravagant lifestyle had decimated their credit scores. The loan was denied. For a week, the house was a war zone of slammed doors, Savannah's hysterical sobbing, and my parents whispering frantically in the kitchen late at night. I stayed out of it, picking up extra shifts to avoid the drama, knowing I was only weeks away from hitting my $45,000 goal and moving out for good. Then came that horrific Tuesday afternoon. I came home from a double shift at the diner. My feet were throbbing, and all I wanted was a hot shower. As I walked up the stairs, the door to my bedroom was wide open. My mattress was shoved off the box spring. My drawers were pulled out, clothes scattered across the hardwood floor. And sitting on my desk chair, legs crossed, was Savannah. In her lap was my smashed steel lockbox. In her hand was a stack of paper, my latest bank statements, and the withdrawal slips she had printed. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling as the sheer violation of the scene registered in my brain. Savannah didn't even flinch. She looked up, an infuriatingly calm smirk playing on her lips. She waved the papers in the air. "Found your little savings," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Thanks for the college fund, sis." "Put those down," I snapped, lunging forward. "That is my property. You broke my lockbox." Savannah stood up, easily dodging my exhausted grasp, and stepped out into the hallway. "Mom! Dad!" she yelled, playing the victim instantly. "Courtney's trying to hit me." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. My mother and father appeared, but they didn't look shocked by the mess in my room. They looked defensive. "Courtney, calm down!" my father barked, stepping between me and Savannah. "Calm down? She broke into my lockbox. She's holding my bank statements," I screamed, tears of absolute rage prickling my eyes. My mother crossed her arms, refusing to meet my gaze. "We had to, Courtney. We had to see what you were hiding." "Hiding? It's my money. I worked 80-hour weeks for 4 years." Savannah rolled her eyes, leaning against the doorframe. "Oh, please. You just hoard cash while I was literally about to lose my spot at Crestwood. You were going to let my life be ruined, just so you could go to some local community college and be a nurse." "It's Chamberlain, and it's my money," I yelled, turning to my parents. "Tell her to give it back." Then came the twist of the knife. My mother finally looked at me, her expression hardening into cold rationalization. "Courtney, we've already taken care of it. Savannah's tuition is due tomorrow. I went to the bank this morning." The air left my lungs. The world tilted sideways. "You... what?" "I was still on the account," my mother said, her voice completely devoid of remorse. "I authorized a cashier's check for $42,000. It's already been deposited into Savannah's student account at Crestwood." "You stole it," I whispered, the reality crashing over me like a freezing wave. "You stole $42,000 from me." "We didn't steal it," my father interjected, his tone patronizing. "We reallocated family resources. You are so resourceful, Courtney. You're a hard worker. Savannah isn't like you. She needs this to secure her future. You can just stay here rent-free for another year and build it back up." "Build it back up?" I choked out, a hysterical laugh escaping my throat. 4 years. 4 years of my life, gone, because you couldn't tell your spoiled brat of a daughter no. Savannah scoffed. "Don't be dramatic, Courtney. It's just money. You don't even have a life anyway. What else are you going to do but work?" I looked at the three of them. My father, stern and unyielding. My mother, looking slightly uncomfortable but entirely committed to her golden child. And Savannah, waving my bank statements like a trophy. I realized in that exact moment that I didn't have a family. I had a group of parasites who shared my last name. I didn't scream anymore. The white-hot rage evaporated, replaced by an icy, terrifying clarity. I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked over my scattered clothes, and pulled 2 large black trash bags from my closet. "What are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice faltering slightly. "Leaving," I said simply. I opened my dresser and began indiscriminately shoving jeans, shirts, and underwear into the bags. "Courtney, don't be ridiculous," my father sighed. "Where are you going to go? You don't have any money." The cruelty of the statement almost made me physically sick, but I kept my hands moving. I packed my toiletries, my laptop, and my few sentimental items. I grabbed the broken lockbox, taking the remaining documents out of Savannah's hands as I walked past her. She surrendered them easily. She already had what she wanted. I walked down the stairs, out the front door, and into the damp September evening. I threw the bags into the trunk of my beat-up Civic, got into the driver's seat, and drove away. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. I drove to a Target parking lot, parked under a flickering halogen streetlight, and completely broke down. I sobbed until my ribs ached, and I couldn't catch my breath. Everything I had worked for, the literal sweat and tears poured into double shifts, the agonizing discipline of denying myself any joy or comfort for years, stolen in a single morning. When the tears finally stopped, leaving me hollow and exhausted, I pulled out my phone and called Clara. Clara had been my best friend since middle school. She knew everything about my family dynamic. When she picked up, I only managed to choke out 3 words. They took it. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Clara's hand-me-down sofa in her tiny one-bedroom apartment, wrapped in a blanket while she aggressively paced the floor. "I'm going to kill them," Clara seethed, handing me a mug of hot tea. "I am literally going to drive over there and burn their house down. Courtney, this has to be illegal. You're 22 years old." "My mum's name was still on the account as a joint owner from when I was 17, I mumbled, staring blankly at the tea. The bank let her do it. Legally, she had the right to withdraw the funds. "There has to be something we can do," Clara insisted, sitting beside me. "You can stay here as long as you need. We'll figure this out." The next morning, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind a crushing depression. But beneath the depression, a tiny ember of determination was beginning to glow. I called into both of my jobs and asked for 2 days off, my first days off in over 6 months. Then, I put on my only business casual outfit, grabbed the remnants of my financial documents, and drove to my bank. I needed to see exactly what had happened. I needed the paper trail. I sat in the sterile, glass-walled office of the branch manager, Mr. Harrison. He was an older man with kind eyes who recognized me. I came in every single Friday to deposit my cash tips. When I explained the situation, his face fell in genuine sympathy. "Courtney, I am so incredibly sorry," Mr. Harrison said gently, looking at his computer screen. "The withdrawal was made yesterday at 9:15 a.m. Martha Jenkins came in with her ID. Because it was an old UTMA account that was never formally converted to an individual account, she maintained custodial access. She requested a cashier's check for $42,300. "Can you print the exact withdrawal slip and a copy of the cleared check?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "I need to see where it went." "I can," he said, tapping away at his keyboard. A few moments later, he handed me a printout. I stared at the copy of the cashier's check. It was made payable directly to Crestwood Institute of Art, student accounts. In the memo line, my mother had written Savannah's full name and student ID number. I thanked Mr. Harrison and walked out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the paper. Savannah was legally enrolled. The money was gone. I was sitting at ground zero. But as I looked closer at the bank statements Savannah had so carelessly tossed back at me yesterday, my eyes caught a discrepancy. I flipped to the very back of the folder where I kept documents related to my side gig. Because I did bookkeeping for the HVAC company, my boss, Mr. Henderson, had helped me set up a registered LLC, Jenkins Financial Solutions, so I could take on a few extra freelance clients during tax season. To build business credit, I had linked my personal savings account as the primary funding source for the LLC's operational expenses, specifically for purchasing a proprietary accounting software license that was set to auto-renew in 2 days. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My mother hadn't just drained a personal savings account. By pulling the entirety of those funds, she had caused my linked business account to instantly default on a massive, legally binding vendor contract. More importantly, because the funds were technically commingled and earmarked for a registered corporate entity, my mother's unauthorized withdrawal, while allowed by the bank's outdated personal account rules, constituted a massive breach of fiduciary duty and corporate sabotage. But the real twist wasn't about the LLC. It was about how my parents had funded Savannah's life before they stole my money. I opened my laptop right there in the parking lot and logged into a separate credit monitoring app. A year ago, I had frozen my credit because I received a weird alert about a credit card application. I had assumed it was random identity theft. Now, with the veil completely lifted on my parents' morality, a sickening suspicion crawled up my throat. I paid the $14.99 fee to temporarily unfreeze and pull a comprehensive deep dive credit report on myself. The loading circle spun. 1 second, 2 seconds. The report populated. I didn't have one credit card. I had 6. 3 Chase Sapphire cards, 2 American Express Platinum cards, and a massive personal loan through Discover. Total outstanding balance, $87,400. All of them opened using my Social Security number, but tied to an email address that looked suspiciously like my father's old AOL account. My parents hadn't just stolen my future. They had been secretly living under my identity for 3 years to fund Savannah's glamorous lifestyle. The designer bags, the cheerleading trips, the leased BMW Savannah drove, it was all in my name. And because they had been making the minimum payments until recently, it had stayed somewhat under the radar. But now, they were maxed out. They had stolen my cash to pay Savannah's tuition because they literally couldn't squeeze another dime out of my stolen identity. Savannah waving those papers in my face wasn't just a sister mocking my hard work. It was the catalyst that unraveled a massive federal crime. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. I was no longer the invisible, reliable daughter. I was a victim of grand larceny, identity theft, and wire fraud, and I had the bookkeeping skills to prove every single penny of it. "Thanks for the college fund, Savannah," I whispered to the empty car. "I hope you enjoy your first semester, because it's going to be your last." The next 48 hours were a masterclass in controlled surgical rage. Clara's small apartment transformed into a war room. We pushed her coffee table against the wall and covered the floor in printed bank statements, credit reports, and highlighted vendor contracts. I didn't sleep. The adrenaline coursing through my veins felt like battery acid, keeping my mind razor-sharp and terrifyingly focused. Every single transaction on those 6 fraudulent credit cards was a slap in the face. My parents hadn't just used my identity to keep the lights on. They had used it to fund absolute luxury. There was a $3,200 charge at a Chanel boutique in Chicago, a $4,500 bill from a resort in Cabo San Lucas from a girls' trip Savannah took for her 19th birthday, and the lease payments for the BMW Savannah drove, $399 a month, automatically drafted from the Discover personal loan they had fraudulently secured using my Social Security number. "They bought her a Peloton," Clara said, her voice dropping to a horrified whisper as she stared at a Chase Sapphire statement. "Courtney, they literally financed a $2,000 stationary bike on a card in your name while you were working double shifts to afford nursing scrubs." "Highlight it," I replied coldly, not looking up from the laptop. I was logged into the Federal Trade Commission's identity theft portal, meticulously filling out an affidavit. Every single luxury purchase gets a pink highlighter. Every utility bill or household expense gets a yellow one. I want the police to see exactly what kind of necessities they were stealing my future for. By Wednesday morning, I had a 3-inch thick binder of evidence. It contained the FTC identity theft affidavit, the comprehensive credit reports from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, the fraudulent credit card statements, the original withdrawal slip from my savings account, and a formal letter from my LLC's software vendor indicating a breach of contract due to insufficient funds. I took a shower, put on a stiff blazer, and drove to the Central Police Precinct in downtown. I didn't go to the front desk and ask for a patrol officer. I asked to speak to the Financial Crimes Division. I was introduced to Detective Miller, a tired-looking man with graying hair who looked like he had seen every variation of human greed imaginable. At first he seemed skeptical, likely assuming this was a petty domestic dispute over a borrowed debit card. But as I opened the binder and began walking him through the timeline, the paperwork, and the staggering $87,400 of fraudulent debt, his posture changed. He sat up straighter, pulling the documents toward him. "Your parents opened these accounts 3 years ago," Detective Miller murmured, tracing a finger over the Discover loan application. "You were 19. They bypassed the security verification by using a variation of your mother's maiden name for the security questions and a burner email address." "Yes, sir. And 3 days ago, they drained my personal savings account, which was tethered to a registered limited liability company, to pay Crestwood Institute of Art $42,000 for my sister's tuition, because their own credit was entirely ruined, and they had maxed out the fraudulent cards in my name." Detective Miller looked up at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Ms. Jenkins, I need you to understand something. If you officially file this report, this leaves my desk and goes to the district attorney. We are talking about multiple counts of felony identity theft, grand larceny, and potentially wire fraud. Your parents will face severe prison time. There is no taking this back once the warrant is signed." "Detective," I said, my voice as steady as a metronome, "they took 4 years of my blood and sweat to buy my sister a Chanel bag and an art degree. Sign the paperwork." With the police report officially filed, the dominoes began to fall. I spent the next 2 days submitting the police report to all 3 major credit bureaus, initiating a total security freeze and fraud alert. I contacted Chase, American Express, and Discover, officially contesting every single charge and providing the police report case number. The fraud departments instantly locked the accounts. The free ride was officially over. Meanwhile, my family remained blissfully, aggressively ignorant. My phone buzzed constantly with text messages from them, which I meticulously screenshotted and saved to a cloud drive. "Mom, Courtney, this silent treatment is incredibly immature. Your sister moved into her dorm today. You should be happy for her. Dad, you need to come home and apologize to your mother. We did what was best for the family. You can live here rent-free while you save up again. Savannah." "LMAO. Are you still pouting at Clara's? Crestwood is amazing, by the way. The dining hall has a sushi bar. Have fun smelling like pancake syrup, loser." I read Savannah's text, a cold smile touching my lips. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had just gotten off the phone with Mr. Sterling, a powerhouse corporate attorney my boss had connected me with. Mr. Sterling had taken one look at my LLC documents and the unauthorized withdrawal and practically salivated. They commingled stolen funds and disrupted a registered corporate entity, Mr. Sterling had explained over the phone. "The local police will handle the identity theft, but I am going to draft a formal letter of notification to Crestwood Institute of Art. Educational institutions have incredibly strict anti-money laundering and fraud compliance protocols. Once they are notified that a student's tuition was paid, using proceeds directly linked to a grand larceny and identity theft investigation, well, they won't want to be caught holding the bag. Everything was set. The trap was spring-loaded. All I had to do was wait for the hammer to drop. The explosion happened exactly 1 week after Savannah smirked at me. Tuesday morning, my phone erupted. It was my mother. I hit record and answered. "Courtney," she shrieked, panic cracking her voice. "Where are you? You have to tell them it's a mistake." "Tell who?" I asked, perfectly calm. "The police. They have a warrant. They're putting your father in handcuffs. They're saying we stole your identity. Tell them you gave us permission." In the background, my father roared, "We are your parents, you vindictive—" A firm, authoritative voice cut him off, ordering him to place his hands behind his back. The clinking of metal cuffs echoed over the line. "I didn't give permission," I replied, leaning back in my office chair. "You racked up $87,000 in debt, then stole my cash." "We're going to jail. How could you do this to your own family?" my mother wailed, the sound of her crying pathetic and desperate. "You didn't act like family when you handed my future to Savannah. You acted like thieves, and thieves go to jail." I hung up, blocking her number. The shockwave hit Crestwood Institute of Art 2 hours later. Clara's cousin, a fellow freshman, witnessed the spectacle. Savannah was sitting in a mandatory freshman orientation, dripping in designer clothes paid for by my ruined credit. She had spent the morning bragging about her BMW. Right in the middle of a lecture on abstract expressionism, campus security and the dean of admissions marched down the aisle. The room went dead silent as they stopped at Savannah's row and firmly escorted her out. Inside the administration office, she was handed an immediate expulsion notice. Mr. Sterling's letter and a call from the district attorney had worked flawlessly. Crestwood froze the cashier's check pending the criminal investigation, leaving Savannah's tuition unpaid. Citing a zero-tolerance policy for fraudulent enrollment, the university gave her exactly 1 hour to pack her luxury items into trash bags, a poetic mirror to my own exit, and escorted her off the grounds. Her peers watched through the dorm windows as she dragged black plastic bags across the quad. When Savannah reached the visitor lot, sobbing and gasping for air, the final blow landed. A tow truck was hoisting her leased BMW into the air. I had reported the vehicle as fraudulently obtained, fast-tracking the repossession. Savannah screamed, lunged forward, and tried to physically block the truck, but the driver calmly handed her a business card and drove away with her favorite status symbol. By sunset, the reality of their choices settled in. My parents sat in county, holding cells, wearing orange jumpsuits, denied bail due to the massive flight risk implications of wire fraud. Savannah was stranded on the curb outside Crestwood, frantically calling our parents' phones, which were sitting in a police evidence locker, bagged and tagged. Using the last $30 in her checking account, she called an Uber to take her back to our dark, empty, quiet house. The aftermath reshaped my entire existence. Faced with a mountain of paper evidence, my parents' public defender strongly urged a plea deal. The courtroom felt cold as the judge read the charges. My parents looked small, stripped of their entitlement and arrogance. They pleaded guilty to felony identity theft and wire fraud, receiving 3 years in state prison. My mother wept openly, while my father stared at the floor. The judge showed zero leniency, ordering full restitution to the credit card companies and directly to me for the stolen cash. With the convictions on record, the credit bureaus wiped the massive debt from my profile, bouncing my credit score back to a pristine 780. Mr. Harrison, the bank manager, advocated fiercely on my behalf. The corporate bank office expedited a courtesy reimbursement of my stolen $42,000 while they pursued my parents' frozen assets. By January, my bank account was whole. I had won. I enrolled in Chamberlain University's nursing program. I moved into a beautiful apartment with Clara, decorating it with things I bought with my own hard-earned money. I finally quit the diner, keeping only my bookkeeping job to pay for groceries. I had the life I had bled for. And Savannah? Without our parents to fund her delusions, reality crushed her. With no degree and no skills, she had to sell her designer wardrobe on consignment apps just to pay the property taxes on our parents' house, desperately trying to keep it from going into foreclosure. The final update came from Clara, who discreetly snapped a photo while grabbing breakfast one Sunday morning. It was Savannah. Her hair was tied back in a messy net, and she was wearing a stained, brown, polyester uniform. She carried a heavy tray of plates, looking utterly miserable as she wiped down a sticky booth at Sullivan's Pancake House, doing the exact job she once mocked me for. Her acrylic nails were gone, replaced by the permanent smell of stale coffee. Betrayal doesn't roar, it smirks, but karma doesn't smirk. It serves you exactly what you deserve, down to the very last drop of maple syrup. Did Courtney go too far, or did her parents and sister get exactly the karma they deserved for stealing her future? Family or not, financial abuse is a crime. Let me know whose side you are on in the comments below. If you love real-life drama, hard karma, and satisfying justice, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more incredible daily stories.